So, Moshe, you've had a number of big moves in the last few years, from New York to Florida to your current home in LA. A lot of big changes in your personal life, but many of our viewers might not know that you were actually Canadian. So we wanted to find out how you keep your Canadianness. I know that's not a word, but wherever you are in the world.
Canadianness is definitely a word to me, Tracy. And yeah, it's been interesting because, usually before the pandemic, I was in Canada on a monthly basis for work and for family, and I'd be able to come in and film with you for Cityline, and that was so great. But maybe people don't realize now that I'm here in LA that I actually am Canadian. Don't worry, everyone. And it's super important to me to represent as a Canadian, because if you've ever lived in another country, if you're living in Canada and you're Canadian, you're not saying on like a weekly basis to people, oh, I'm Canadian, the way I am living here in the US. So with that, there's a certain standard to uphold as a Canadian that I like to really think about no matter where I am in the world. So starting off with, what I love about Canadians is we don't complain about the weather. We embrace the seasons and we're prepared for it. So that means everything from layering, always having the right coat for every type of weather. But then if you're a Canadian, you are probably inclined, like me, to throw on a bathing suit, get in a hot tub in the middle of winter in the snow, and then roll in said snow. I think that's a very Canadian thing to do. A love of the hot and the cold, the extreme elements. And then, like I said, always being prepared, making sure you have the right underpinnings, the right socks, etc., so we don't bore people and waste time complaining about things we can't control, like the weather. Another thing I love about Canadians, all my Canadian friends are some of the most artistic people I know. I think sometimes living in places that are remote and have extreme harsh conditions can make you go inward and really use your imagination, and it can spark creativity. We see that throughout the music industry, throughout the entertainment industry, and it extends to the arts. So this friend of mine, Mariam Kahani, she is a fine artist. She's Iranian Canadian, splits her time between Canada and Berlin. And she makes the most incredible wearable art headpieces and millinery,
Wow.
Tracy. This is one of her pieces with the pearl, which I think is so beautiful. And I love, you've got to check her out on Instagram, because the way she lives her life is art. And she's a very, very, very cool, inspiring Canadian. Speaking of Canadians that I love to support, I think the thing about Canadians that brings us all together is if we have something we like, we share it and we want to support each other. I have so many Canadian friends that have their own businesses and are super entrepreneurial. One of whom is my friend Elizabeth Minette, who has the most gorgeous brand of luxury candles called Candor Paris. All her candles are made in France. This one I've lit here right now is my absolute favorite. It's her scent #1, and it just smells like you're transported to the most glamorous Hotel Particulier in Paris. So I love supporting Elizabeth's work and scenting my home with it.
Very nice. Okay, you're making me sort of have even more Canadian pride, and I love the fact that we all get together wherever we are. You always know when there's a fellow Canadian, there's going to be a connection. So I'm going to throw another one down. Canadians love their sweatpants, Moshe. So do you live in them year-round? Are you on the sweatpant and tracksuit train?
Of course I am. As soon as I get home or as soon as I finish work, that's the first thing I do. In fact, I recently got this set from Roots, Tracy, which has made me super homesick because it's this great tie-dye pair that, I wear to do the very Canadian activities of things like making s'mores on a campfire in my backyard. Uh, but then another great brand, because you're right, it's a very Canadian thing to to have that desire to be cozy and change into your sweatpants and kind of like hibernate a little bit. My husband, who's English, he doesn't have this desire. So I got him this set that I actually wear more than he does because he's more comfortable in like a three-piece suit. But this is a Canadian brand I love called Reigning Champ. They make for men and women, all made in Canada, very high-end, luxurious quality sweats that I just love.
Ooh, I'm about to look them up. I'm all about the tracksuits. Now, last on your list is one of my personal favorites. What have you got?
Yes. Okay. So, two things. One is that some of the most formal and glamorous occasions I have ever been to are in Canada. It is a complete misnomer that we're always in sweatpants. I think Canadians love any excuse to dress up. And one of the best ways that you can do that, especially now, is through your accessories. So I've discovered this gorgeous brand that has an Indigenous founder, which I love, April, called Loftan. And she makes a whole bunch of the most beautiful, real statement necklaces that dress up any look. And speaking of finishing everything off with a Canadian touch, Tracy, of course, as you were talking about earlier, it's all about maple syrup. I don't care where I'm in the world. I make sure I have Canadian maple syrup, and it's not Canadian just because it has the maple leaf on it. I literally check the label, make sure it's not from Vermont. It's got to be a product of Canada. This is going on my salmon, in my coffee, in salad dressing, and everything. So if that doesn't make me Canadian enough, I don't know what does.
You couldn't get more Canadian. And I'll throw one more thing in there. You have a full Canadian coat wardrobe. And if you're a Canadian, you have a wardrobe of coats. For spring, for fall, for first winter, second winter, and then winter, winter, winter. So yes, Moshe, we know that you are so Canadian. And she comes from Canadian fashion royalty. Hello, your mom, who, you know, is known across Canada. So keep that Canadiana goodness with you always. We love when you sprinkle a little bit down there and come back to us as well.